Hello and welcome to the Children's and Teen Health Summit. I'm your host, Carla Atherton, founder and director of the Lotus Health Project, lotushealthproject.com, where we empower people to get healthy and stay healthy in mind, body, and spirit, and on the social, global, and environmental levels. For this session of the summit, I'm excited to be speaking with Bruce Lipton about epigenetics and how this groundbreaking science can profoundly change the health of our children for the better. Bruce H. Lipton, PhD, cellular and developmental biologist, was formerly associate professor of anatomy at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and a research fellow of the School of Medicine at Stanford University. In recognition of his contributions to the field of embryology and human development, the Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health, elected Dr. Lipton to their board of directors. Bruce has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a popular keynote speaker and workshop presenter on topics of conscious parenting and the science of complementary medicine. Welcome to the summit, Dr. Lipton.
Carla, I am so excited to be here with you and your wonderful audience because all those people out there listening are very seriously involved with, is there a better way of living on this planet? And so they represent what to me, are cultural creatives. Thank you, listeners, for looking for new answers outside of the box.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking about that with you because we talk about a lot of stuff that's very quote unquote practical, and we consider this stuff unpractical, the stuff we're talking about that's outside the box. But really, yes. We were just talking just before recording now, it's like, it's way more than that, and it's much more impactful than some of this quote unquote practical stuff.
Oh, yeah, because, there's a story, people have heard it for years. It's called Knowledge is Power.
Yeah.
And everyone's familiar with that. But I'd like to rephrase the exact same thing in a different way, but I think it's more impactful. And that is, a lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And the knowledge that we have been provided with by the classical insights of genetics and all that is actually incorrect. And so therefore, by definition, it represents a lack of knowledge. If that's what you think is what's happening and it's wrong, then you actually don't have knowledge. And so we have been disempowered by a belief system in science that has now been upturned, and there's a whole new insight, a new biology, and it's so important because the new biology is one that represents self-empowerment, meaning we're not victims, but we're really creators of our life, our experiences, our biology, and the world in which we live.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And so, this is fascinating and exciting. And I don't think that it's just for adults. I actually think, when we think about these things, like thinking in a different way and outside the box, we think of adults and maybe we get into this when we get a little older. But really, I don't think that's so. I think that when you talk about this concept, it's a concept for families, for teens, children, anyone on the planet who wants to attain true health without being at the mercy of genetic fate. So, Bruce, I just had to interview you for this because I want to hear what you have to say about health and wellness and how to attain it, because when we raise our children with these concepts at the forefront, our kids will benefit with true vitality and health. So what do you think about the current state of health of our children?
The health of our children has been so altered by our belief system and our corporations. And our corporations, of course, are to me, the biggest, excuse me, but I have to say criminals in a sense of taking health out of our hands. We've been led to believe that certain foods that are marketed are the meals that we should be eating. They had something called the food pyramid, suggested what kind of, how much dairy, how much grain, how much protein and all that. And you would think from that kind of information, this is an agreed on scientific understanding of what nutrition is all about.
Yep.
And what people really fail to understand is that this was actually derived from a meeting of corporate leaders in each of these industries. And it was really their corporate inputs that determined what level on the food pyramid their product would be registered as. And so basically it was, this is another example of corporate money actually creating a false science that is then advertised to the public, and the public buys into it and goes, "Oh, yes, this is what we should be eating. This is we should have so many units of this and that." And it's like, that was all wrong. And we're being marketed a lot of things that take away our power. People don't understand, for example, that we're not using sugar original sugar, which isn't that great. We're using something worse in our world today for sweetener called high fructose corn syrup. And in every soft drink, there are tablespoons of this kind of stuff. And every meal, if you look at what foods are made out of, there's corn syrup and all this. And I'll give you a simple fact about corn syrup. They did a study with rats, and it was a learning and memory study where they put them into a maze and see how fast they can learn the maze, put them into certain circumstances that are stressful. What they did is they compared two groups of rats. One fed regular sugar, which everyone says, ooh, this is really, really bad. And then those fed with high fructose corn syrup. And the relevance about all that was those animals that had a diet high in high fructose corn syrup failed very badly at memory and learning tasks. And it's interesting because this is the primary sweetener that the public is using. And they don't realize that by taking this high fructose corn syrup into their system, they very seriously impact learning and memory. Well, then you look at children's diets and you see how much of this stuff is in every food that a child eats. And it's like we are down-dumbing our population with the corporate greed of the corn industry. And yet we're given like, oh, this is really good for you because sugar is bad. And it's like, well, sugar might not be good, but it's a heck of a lot better than high fructose corn syrup. And we have to recognize that are our interests really supported by corporate activities? And the answer is absolutely not. Corporate activities are designed to make a profit for shareholders.
Right.
And people don't understand that. It's like, oh, well, this corporation, they make this good product. And I say, well, they make that good product because they're serving you. And I go, no, they're making that product because it'll make a profit for shareholders. And when we start to understand that, then we realize, oh, is this corporation really interested in my health? Or are they really interested in the health of the pocketbook of their shareholders? And the answer is the latter. And all of a sudden we start to realize we buy into beliefs in advertising that, oh, this is good for you and this is bad for you and all that, without even knowing that almost all of that opinion is provided by corporate interests and corporate money. And I even recently just recognized a very important fact, because a lot of people, and I myself, use Wikipedia as a resource.
Yeah.
And I just found out that in regard to health and nutrition issues and all that, Wikipedia is an open source, meaning that people can add comments and ideas and new research and all that to an ongoing, evolving, book of information. What they don't recognize is that corporate interests, they pay people to monitor their websites associated with their products and what their sales are all about. And they rewrite Wikipedia to support their corporate interests. And this is shocking to me because I used to use it as, oh, this is a very important source of information. Now I recognize, oh my God, it's corrupted by the fact that a lot of that information is paid for by corporations. And is not in support of us as people, but is in support of their financial system.
So we're kind of missing the point that we need to empower ourselves and really get the right information, because we're being kind of led by the nose a little bit.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because look, there's a simple understanding, and I come from a formerly great country called America, which is no longer that. And it's interesting because when I'm 70 years old, and then I can remember back 60 or so years ago when, wow, America was so cool. We were way into the world of technology. We had all the great advancements. Life in the country was really good and healthy and advanced as far as nations go. And today, the U.S. is one of the sickest nations in regard to healthcare crisis, and also now one of the stupidest nations in regard to intelligence. And you think, wow, what the heck happened in this downfall? And it actually turns out this was a mission. This was a mission statement. I use a quote in some of my lectures from a British parliamentarian by the name of Tony Benn.
Okay.
And Tony Benn specifically said, and this is like a quote, governments do not want a healthy, intelligent population because they are difficult to control. And then I look at our downhill slide in the United States and I realize, oh my God, they have succeeded because we are the least healthy and coming up to be the least intelligent of the major nations in the world. And there's a tremendous control over us, and it's like, oh my God, we've been manipulated to be disempowered. And why it's so important that I talk with you and your community is because your message is empowerment. Well, how do you get empowerment in a world whose function is to disempower the people? And the answer is step outside the box. Do not buy into this corporate programming, which is really reducing our ability to take care of our health and our lives. And that's why it's not just the United States that's having a healthcare crisis. The globe is having a healthcare crisis.
Yeah. You know, I think we know the answer to this question, perhaps, but what do you think about the current state of the health of our children?
Well, we've compromised them so profoundly that look at how many kids today are on drugs just to get through childhood, all that like Ritalin kind of stuff, all that, all the things I say. Look at the autism that is affecting us. Autism is not like a genetic thing. Autism is an epidemic, meaning it's spreading faster than genetics can ever account for it. So it said autism is not a genetic thing. Autism is a lifestyle consequence. And the fact is we are compromising our children to disempower them so that a few elitists have power over a large number. So very just simply in the United States, for example, or actually pretty much going around the world, like in the US, 1% of the population has more money and more ability to get health and happiness than 99% of the people. And so really what we see is everything is out of balance, and we want to bring it back. And, one of the most interesting things is, think about this. How many women are breastfeeding their children? And I go, well, the numbers of industrial civilization have declined to it's a minority of people. And I go, you know what? Nobody's telling you about the science of breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's so important is this, is that a child's brain develops to over 2/3 its adult size within the first 2 years of life. The relevance about that is the brain, when you open up a skull and you look at it, is not red meat like muscle. It's quite white. And I go, well, why is it so white? And the answer is because it's mainly built of lipids and fats. Right. That is what makes membranes, and that's what makes neurons primarily. And then I say, well, interestingly enough, human milk was designed for the development of a human child. So it is the source of the highest valued lipids in the world. There's nothing in the world, synthetic or manufactured by corporations, that in any way can be comparable to the lipids provided in mother's milk. Nature designed these lipids to do what? Build a brain. And when you shorten the lipids, you impact brain and nerve development. So I say, what about the lipids in formula milk? I say, virtually non-existent compared to mother's milk. And then number two, a child's immune system doesn't really develop until after it's a couple years old. I said, well, how does the child then, protect itself from the issues of life? And I go, mother's milk is the source of antibodies that protect the child. And I go, well, what about formula? Zero antibodies.
Right.
And all of a sudden I say, oh my God, not only have you compromised the nutrition of your child, which is the nutrition specifically for nerve development and brain development, but now you have fully compromised the health of the child because you're not providing it with what is called passive immunity, meaning its system doesn't actively make immunity. It receives immunity from the mother primarily through the milk. And I say, isn't it interesting how corporate interests and an industrial world, which demands our time, enslaves us to a certain degree, has said, well, excuse me, but screw the children in this. Just give them the formula so you can get back on the job. And the reality is, oh my God, you don't realize how by diverting nature's natural understanding of health and life and development, we have fully compromised the health and intelligence of our children just by the simple fact of not breastfeeding them.
Wow. So would you say that's the number one cause of the decline of the health of our children, or would you say there are other factors as well?
That and the fact that the nutrition we're providing, the grains, the sugars, I got off sugar a few months ago, and it was interesting because when I go to the market and you read the labels, almost everything that's processed has sugar in it. And sugar is a detriment to the system. Grains are a detriment to the system. And I say, why is that? And I say, because in the evolution of humanity, There were no farmers. Grain wasn't a resource for people who evolved on this planet. They were hunter-gatherers. So, even fruit, you didn't get fruit all year long. You'd get it in a very small time period, and it was used just at that time period. Grain wasn't even on the table because, and all of a sudden we have moved into this market, the agriculture. And I say, well, what's interesting about it? Well, since we grow so much of it and then encourage people like in the food pyramid, like the bottom level with the largest amount is grain. Yeah. How did they get that? And the answer was lobbying with money during building of the food pyramid. That's how they got it. And now do we find out what? Many of the illnesses and the problems we face today are diet related. We're not eating natural, and we're supplementing it with all these different additives and things like that, thinking that, our biology is not really, affected by this. And it's like your biology is directly affected by the nutrition, or most importantly, the lack of nutrition that children are getting today. So it says, look, we are compromising the fate of human civilization by what? Compromising the health and development of children. If they get off the ground on a bad start, that becomes a health crisis in the next few years. And this is what we're paying for. Yeah. Look what's going on.
Yeah. And the kids are too, right? Especially so. And so Bruce, how do you define health?
Well, health is, I guess the best way of saying health is, let's say you have a car, and it runs smoothly and beautifully and efficiently and everything. I say, well, that's a healthy car. Yep. If your body is running smoothly, efficiently, it's healthy, you have your abilities at hand, your intelligence is at performance level, your health is at, again, athletic performance level, meaning you are a smooth running machine. When you fail that and the engine starts to miss a little bit, or issues like, mechanical failures, then you see, the health of my vehicle, if we're talking about a car, begins to fail. And I go, well, you're looking at a human. Once you start to see the attributes of humanness start to be compromised, then by definition, you're saying I'm compromising health. Why? Because when you're in full health, we have such attributes. We have so powerful as human beings. And yet, look at what we see ourselves as: frail, vulnerable. My goodness, things like bacteria or sugar could destroy your life. And I go, that's totally incorrect. We are so much more powerful. I'll give you an example. People walk across hot coals. You say, how you do that? And I say, it's a level of consciousness that does it. It's not physical. You can walk across the hot coals as long as your consciousness is in harmony with doing this task, everything's cool. But the moment, let's say you're walking across the hot coals, and the moment you have doubt, like, can I do this, is the instant you get burned. And I say, well, what's the relevance about that? I said, your mind was so powerfully protecting you until you opened it up for doubt. And the moment you opened up for doubt, all of a sudden, all your powers got lost. And this is the issue. We doubt who we are. We look at ourselves as, being powerless in a large degree. And as I said, being frail. And I say, that's a mindset. And we need to understand this is not true, but it becomes true when your mind is in that state, because a mind with a negative attitude is a mind that's releasing negative chemistry, and the chemistry released by the brain is the chemistry that coordinates and organizes the activity of our biology. So if I start releasing negative chemicals into the blood system, then I'm compromising the health of everything in the system. And it's interesting because people for years were, mind, body, and then all of a sudden there was allopathic medicine said that's not really real. That's a new age idea of mind body. There's no real mind body. And I go, that's so full of it.
Yeah.
My research from, let's see, how is it now? 48 years ago, I was cloning stem cells.
Yes.
Now, 48 years ago, there were only a few people in the whole world that even knew what the heck a stem cell was. So I had a unique opportunity to be a pioneer in an amazing field that today everyone talks about stem cells. And I said, back then I could talk to everybody in the world that knew about stem cells on a call, like a Skype call. I could talk to every one of them. And I said, what's the consequence? And here's what it is. So let me just summarize it so people understand.
Yes, please.
There is a real mind-body story, how simple it is. And it goes like this. A stem cell is an embryonic cell. All of us have stem cells in our bodies because if we didn't, we would die. And I say, well, why would we die? And I say, because every day we lose, and listen to the number, I can say it easily, but the magnitude of this number is beyond the word. I say every day we lose hundreds of billions of our cells, normal attrition, they die. And they have to be replaced. Matter of fact, it's the entire lining of the digestive tract, which is how many meters long, the entire lining is replaced every 3 days. And I go, why is this important? I say, well, if you're losing hundreds of billions of cells every day, then by definition, to stay alive and stay healthy, you must replace hundreds of billions of cells every day. And I say, okay, how do you do that? And I say, you have stem cells. Stem cells are embryonic cells. Their function is to keep the system full running by replacing all the cells all the time. So an embryonic cell, a stem cell, it could become muscle, bone, brain, or anything based on its function in the body. So here's my story. Simple. I take one embryonic stem cell and put it in a petri dish, and I feed it growth medium. A growth medium in a laboratory, in a culture dish, is created by the researcher, but it's based on the composition of the blood from the organism where the cells came from. So if I grow rat cells, I make culture medium based on the composition of rat blood. When I grow human cells, I make culture medium based on the composition of human blood. So culture medium is like synthetic blood. Okay, so I create this culture medium for the stem cells, the embryonic cells, to grow. So I put in one cell, and after 10 or 12 hours, it divides and forms two cells. And another 10 to 12 hours, they divide. So we went from one cell to two cells. Then there's four cells. It doubles every 10 hours, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. After a week, I have, let's say, 50,000 cells in the petri dish. They all came from one parent cell. And what's relevant about this? Well, since they all came from one parent cell, then by definition, I have 50,000 genetically identical cells in that petri dish. Now, here's the experiment. I take the cells in that dish and split them into three separate petri dishes. So I have genetically identical cells in three different petri dishes. But here's what I do. I change the chemical composition of the culture medium. That's what the cells grow in. That's their environment. And I make a slight change in each of the three dishes. And in one dish, the cells form muscle. In a second dish, the cells form bone. In a third dish, with a different medium, the cells form fat cells. Then I'm left with a simple question. What controls the fate of the cells? Well, let's start off with the first premise. Hey, they were all genetically the same. So before you even start the experiment, all of them are genetically the same. So you can't say that one became muscle and the other became bone because genetics control that. No, they all had the same genetics. The only difference was the environment, the culture medium, the chemical composition of that growth medium. And I say, oh, so the culture medium composition is directly affecting which genes are read. And I go, absolutely. So the genes didn't make the decision. And let's clear up something right away that is so fundamental. Every one of us has been programmed in school to believe that genes turn on and off. Oh, a cancer gene turned on, this gene turned off, and that's how we are regulated. Genes make decisions like I'm going to turn on, I'm going to turn off. This is called, in a technical word, self-actualization. That means self-control. Genes make the decision to turn on. Genes make the decision to turn off. Therefore, cancer is a decision by your genes. Okay, clearing the air. You ready?
Yep.
Completely false. The entire idea that genes regulate themselves is completely false. A gene cannot turn itself on. A gene cannot turn itself off. A gene cannot regulate anything. A gene is a blueprint, no different in function than a blueprint in an architect's office. Okay. So let's say you're in an architect office. She's working on a blueprint. You lean over her shoulder and you ask the architect, you say, is your blueprint on or off? And she would look at you like, what are you, crazy? It's a blueprint. There's no on and off. I go, precisely. Genes do not have an on and off. And this all of a sudden becomes very important because extend the meaning of genes having on and off. If genes could control themselves, then we buy into the prevailing story. my life is controlled by
Right.
genes.
Yep.
Genes did this, and
Yep.
so I'm a victim. I'm a victim of my heredity. My bad genes caused me to get sick. And it's like, okay, totally false. And what the new science was showing that I saw back 48 years ago was the activity of the genes is not controlled by the genes. It's controlled by the environment. I change the environment, I change the genetic activity. So you go, okay, Bruce, this is really nice. A little story about cells in a tissue culture. What does this have to do with me as a human being?
Yeah.
I go, okay, you ready? This is fun.
Okay.
You look in the mirror, Carla, you
Yes.
see yourself, and in your case, this beautiful woman looking back is Carla, a single human living organism. I am Carla. And I go, that's a misperception, Carla, for the simple reason is this. Because your eyes can't discriminate at the resolution needed, your eyes are not magnifying enough to see. Your body is actually made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. Then what is Carla? Oh, by definition, Carla is a community of cells. So when you say, I am Carla, you are voicing the activity of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. Carla, by definition, is a community.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So now I say, oh, well, here's the jokey part. You ready?
Okay.
Well, then you are made out of 50 trillion cells. You know what you are, Carla? You are a skin-covered petri dish with 50 trillion cells inside. And you have culture medium. What's the culture medium? Blood. Yeah, because that's exactly what I use to create the synthetic culture medium in my plastic culture dish. So here's the story. You are a culture dish. You have culture medium called blood running through your system. The culture medium, it doesn't make a difference. This is it. Ready?
Yes.
It does not make a difference if the cell is in a skin-covered petri dish or the cell is in a plastic petri dish. The fate of the cell is controlled by the culture medium. In the skin-covered dish, we just call it blood. And I say, oh, so the chemical composition of the blood controls the fate of the cells. I go, yes, this is exactly what I showed in a plastic petri dish. Then I go, well, why is that relevant? Here we go. Then what controls the chemical composition of your blood? I go, oh, the brain is the chemist. And then I go, yeah, but what chemicals should the brain put into the culture medium? And I go, that's based on your perception and your beliefs and your mind. And I'll give you an example. Carla, you're sitting there. You got 50 trillion cells inside your culture dish. Blood is pumping around, giving nourishment, providing for the health of your cells.
Yeah.
And then I say, you're sitting there with your eyes closed, but now you open your eyes, and in front of you is someone you love. I say, the brain responding to the mind says, this is someone I love. And the brain, to make harmony out of that, releases the chemistry of love. So when you see someone you love, you feel it in your body. You can feel the happiness, the joy, and all that. And I say, what are you feeling? Chemistry. The brain is releasing chemistry that is related to love. And I go, oh, so when I see someone I love, my blood now contains chemistry related to love, which includes many different things such as dopamine, the pleasure chemical. That's why when you see someone who you love, you have a feeling of pleasure. You are healthy when you see someone you love. When they say, oh, people, look how they're in love. See how they glow? And I go, what do you mean they glow? And I say, well, they're healthy. I say, interesting fact. When you open up your eyes, your mind sees someone you love, your mind interprets that as love, and the brain releases growth hormone in response. And I say, if I add growth hormone to the plastic petri dish of cells, guess what? They grow beautifully. So I say, oh, so what happens when you add growth hormone to your skin-covered petri dish? Oh, the blood brings this growth hormone and causes your cells to grow beautifully and healthy. That's why you're healthy when you fall in love. Then I go, same person, you. This time when you open your eyes, you see something that scares you. I go, oh, well, the interpretation of fear does not lead to the chemistry of love being released by the brain. It releases to the chemistry of fear, which is going to do what? Organize your body to respond to the scare, the stress, the fear. I say, what chemicals? Oh, stress hormones are going to be released. Inflammatory agents that affect the immune system are going to be released. And I go, what if I took the chemicals from the brain seeing fear and put those into a plastic petri dish of cells, you know what happens? The cells stop growing. The cells start to die. And all of a sudden you say, oh, you know that old saying, fear kills? Well, yes, it does, because the chemistry from a brain in fear, if perpetuated for a period of time, will kill the cells. And so basically I say, well, wait a minute. Then the genetics of my cells are not controlling my biology. It's how I perceive the environment that controls my biology, because my perception is translated into chemistry by the brain. The brain chemistry is put into the blood, which is the culture medium that feeds the cells. And all of a sudden you say, mind body? It's not new age. It's an absolute direct connective science. Your mind interprets the world. The interpretation is translated into chemistry. The chemistry is sent via the brain to the blood, and the chemistry in the blood controls the genetics and fate of the cells. Simple point. As you change your mind, as you change your beliefs, as you change your perceptions, you are biochemically changing the genetics and behavior of your cells.
Wow.
And why is this important? Old story, the one that almost everybody out there has been educated with. Genes control you. Genes turn on and off and determine your health and your biology and your behavior and your emotions. So I say, why is that relevant? Well, as far as you know, you didn't pick the genes you came with. If you don't like the characteristics you have, you can't change the genes. So all of a sudden you realize, my God, my life is controlled by genes and I don't control them. They control me. I am a victim. So what did we program the entire population out there? Your health is not up to you. Your health is up to your genes, and you don't control them. They control you. You're a victim. Your health is not in your hands. You want to have health? Go find a professional.
Right.
And all of a sudden I say, what's the net result? And I say, total disempowerment, that you believe you can't control yourself. And I go, this is so false. It is so unbelievably false. But in that falseness, absolutely takes away your health and your power, because your beliefs will release chemistry that matches the belief. Let me give you a profound example of how mind affects body so profoundly. You ready? Simple.
Okay.
Okay, here's how it goes. I hypnotize you, Carla, and I tell you, I'm going to touch your arm with a burning cigarette. So your subconscious mind has a belief that I'm going to burn you with a cigarette.
Yeah, I don't like that.
But so I touch you with my fingertip, but your mind misreads that, because in a state of hypnosis, it says, no, that's not a fingertip. That's a burning cigarette. That's what I'm told. Okay. And I say, guess what? I touch you with my fingertip, and within a few minutes, you're going to have a complete blister. And I go, how the heck did you get a blister? You didn't get burned. I say, no, you physically didn't get burned, but your mind perceived you got burned. And how effective is it? It releases the chemistry from the nervous system to activate the burn response to create a blister, even though the cells never got burned. And it didn't create the blister anywhere in your body. It specifically created the blister exactly where I touched you. And all of a sudden you say, what does it mean? I said, I manifested a reality that wasn't real. How? My brain thought it was real and then created reality out of it. And I go, this is the basis of what is called the placebo effect.
Right.
I say, what's the placebo effect? I say, oh, I tell you that this pill is the greatest advance in medicine, and it's going to cure that thing that nothing else has been able to touch. And you take this pill, this is your pathway to health. You believe that. It's like a hypnosis. Your brain now puts into the database, oh my God, this pill is going to heal me.
Right.
And I say, then what does it happen? Well, the brain, in anticipation, releases the chemistry of healing. And then you find yourself, you got healed. And then I say, oh, you know, that pill I gave you was a sugar pill. And then you say, then what healed me? And the answer, not the sugar pill. It was the belief in the sugar pill. And the belief was translated into chemistry, and that chemistry then controls the fate and genetics of your cells, and that's what healed you. And everyone goes, oh yeah, that's mind over body. And I go, absolutely, that's what placebo effect is, mind over body. And everyone goes, yeah, I've heard of that. And then now comes the serious point, Carla.
Okay.
And that is, well, we were talking about placebo effect. That was, a positive belief about a positive healing, and that results in positive effect. And then I say, what about a negative belief? And here is the biggest problem that nobody's paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
A negative belief is equally powerful in influencing the body as a positive belief, except it works in the opposite direction. A positive belief can heal you with a sugar pill. A negative belief can kill you with the same sugar pill.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it says, wait, positive beliefs, negative beliefs, they're equally powerful. Yes, in affecting your health. Why do we never talk about the negative beliefs? I say, well, that's an interesting point, considering psychologists will tell you that the vast majority of the beliefs that you entertain in your mind today are negative, redundant, disempowering, self-sabotaging. And I go, oh my God, our beliefs, which are primarily negative, are the ones that are controlling your biology, not your genes. So that people say, oh, a gene causes cancer. I did a genetic assessment. And yeah, my mother died of a cancer, breast cancer. My aunt died of a breast cancer. My grandmother died of breast cancer. I have the gene BRCA1. Holy God, I'm going to get breast cancer. And what can I do? And so you do something like Angelina Jolie. Mm-hmm. You have a double mastectomy and say, look, I'm going to take these breasts off before that gene has a chance to activate itself. Mm-hmm. And then now let's just add a little piece of data that nobody talks about. Only 50% of the women with that gene get breast cancer. Mm-hmm. You say, what does that mean? I say, no, you haven't understood. There's 50% of the women with that gene that never get the breast cancer. What's the point? The gene did not cause breast cancer. Having the gene doesn't mean you're going to get breast cancer. 50% of the women never get the breast cancer and they have the gene. What was the point? The gene may move you toward breast cancer, but the gene itself does not cause breast cancer. It's lifestyle. It's changing the culture medium to make a less than healthy blood culture medium that sabotages the cells. Why is that important? I blame the genes. Angelina Jolie says, I have the genes that cause breast cancer. It's like, no, you don't. You have genes that may facilitate the cancer, but the genes did not cause the cancer. It's your lifestyle. And that's how come people that are diagnosed with a terminal illness, many of them have a recovery that's totally amazing. It's called a spontaneous remission.
Yeah.
I go, how did a person with terminal cancer have a spontaneous remission? The answer, inevitably, they had a profound change of belief. I'll give a simple example. Two women get the exact same diagnosis at the exact same time, that they have this cancer and it's terminal. One woman says, oh, my genes caused this. My cells were stupid and my cells did this on their own. And if I go to the doctor, there's a good chance they'll cut out all the stupid cells and then I won't have cancer anymore. So that's one way. The other way is the person gets diagnosed with the breast cancer and goes, geez, my life has been so out of harmony and so out of balance, and I live with so much stress, and I have all these fears, and the hell with it. If I only have a short time left, I'm letting go of all these stresses. I don't care. I'm going to leave this job. I'm going to go on vacation. I got 3 months left. I'm going to enjoy my 3 months. And they go on vacation in 3 months and 4 months and 5 months and 8 months. They still have no cancer. In a year, they still have no cancer. And what was the result? They changed the chemistry from a stressful world that induces that activity of the breast cancer gene into a non-stress world, changed the chemistry, and the cells, again, because the culture medium is different, now become healthy because the new chemistry encourages health, not stress. And the other person who said, oh, I had nothing to do with the cancer, I was a victim because it was stupid genes, they're the ones that are most likely to have the cancer come back. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they were thinking it was the cells that were stupid. They did not put any emphasis of their participation in the cancer. I'm a victim. Stupid cells did this. My life had nothing to do with it. The cells would have formed cancer no matter what I did. And in fact, that was never true. Yeah. The cells did that. So why is this important? How many years have everyone out there been programmed with the belief that their health is out of their control? But it's out of your control. Why? You inherited this stupid gene. You're going to get Alzheimer's, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're a victim of genes. And the new biology is different. So what's the difference? And here, it's in the word itself. What the average citizen has been programmed with is a belief called genetic determinism or genetic control.
Right.
Genetic determinism means genes determine your fate. And so that means genes control your biology. So when I say genetic control, it literally means control by genes. Mm-hmm. There's the new science, the one that I saw 48 years ago. It now has a name. It didn't have a name until 1990. It took about 20 some years after I saw this, even before there was a name to identify it. It's the new science is called epigenetics.
Right.
And you go, well, that sounds exactly the same as genetics. And I go, no, it's a revolution that will change the world in this regard. Mm-hmm. Epi, the prefix epi means above. So when I say genetic control, that means control by genes.
Yeah.
When I say epigenetic control, it literally translates as control above the genes. Oh my God. The new science is different than the old science. The old science, you're a kind of victim of your genes. The new science says, no, your genes don't control anything. It's the information above the genes. And I go, what's that? Well, that's the information in the blood. I go, yeah, but where did that come from? From the brain. I say, yeah, but where did that come from? I go, the mind. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's your mind that controls your biology. And a negative belief, and there's a name for a negative belief, the positive belief influence called placebo. Mm-hmm. A negative belief influence is called nocebo.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Because it's the belief, positive or negative, that determines the composition of the culture medium, which in turn determines the genetic activity of the cell. Mm-hmm. So a negative belief provides a negative environment, which is translated as negative health. Okay. And so everyone feels I'm a victim, and it's like, no, the only thing you're a victim of is your perceptions and beliefs about life.
Okay, so I'm so on board with you. Like, I'm just here going, nodding my head. I'm smiling when you're doing the little, when you're using me as an example. I'm just like, I am right there with you, Bruce. Now I want to know, like, how do we actually use these concepts with our kids? Because, like, how do we employ this? Like, the practical application of all this really good science, mind, body, soul. How do we help these kids to increase their health, or even, help to heal the children who have already, are already having health issues or at risk for other health complications?
Yes. So this requires the next little clearing up of a confusion that is disempowered the entire population. And this is, what did we just leave off with? We left off with the fact that the mind interpretation of the world leads to the chemistry in the blood, which ultimately controls genetics. Yeah. Okay. Now I go, well, what's the mind? This is where we've made a mistake. We call the mind, a single entity, the mind. And I go, no. The mind is made out of two, and listen to this, interdependent elements, meaning there are two separate elements that work together to manifest mind. And you have to recognize these two separate elements are completely different in regard to their function and their ability to learn. And I say, well, what are the two elements that make up the mind? I go, well, there's something called the conscious mind and something called the subconscious mind. Okay. And now why is this relevant? They're not exactly the same. They learn in different ways and they have different abilities. So let's start off with the more recent one, the conscious mind. That's the latest evolution in the nervous system development. That little piece of evolution is what allows humans to stand out above all the other animals on this planet. And I say, what is the conscious mind? The conscious mind is a creative mind. You can think. And I say, thinking is the result of the conscious mind. Lower animals don't really use thinking. They do input, output, stimulus, response, reaction. You stick a needle in, you pull the arm back. it's a no thinking, no brainer. So I say, okay, wait a minute. Then the conscious mind is a creative mind. What about the subconscious mind? A, it was there before the conscious mind because the conscious mind is a later evolution. So that's important. B, the subconscious mind is about 90% of the brain. C, the subconscious mind is not very creative at all. It's like a precocious 5-year-old in creativity, but it's mainly reflex, habit. It's a habit mind. You learn this, and then once you learn it, you don't have to relearn it again. So, and a lot of people say, the subconscious mind where all the evil is. And I say, absolutely not. The subconscious mind is a machine. It's like a CD recorder, or for some of the old people like myself out there, like a tape recorder. And I go, what does that mean? I say, there's a program playing in your CD or on your tape, and you say, is it a good program or bad program? I go, well, that's listening to the program. I say, does that mean if it's a bad program, you have a bad CD player or a bad tape player? And I go, no, the tape player or the CD player, that's just a device. It's not good or bad. And yet we blame the subconscious. We say that's bad. And I go, no, it's just a recording device. The subconscious isn't bad. The programs are good and bad. And I say, oh, well, how do you get the programs? I go, this is critical. The subconscious mind is the habit mind. Once it learns a program, it's resistant to change. Why? Well, once you learned how to walk as an infant, think of this as very positive side subconscious mind. How long did it take you to learn how to walk when you were an infant, trying to get back to the days of trying to stand up and walk without falling over? And I go, well, you did that. You learned it. Guess what? That was when you were a couple years old. And I say, and how old are you today? Whatever. And I go, guess what? Same program is still in there. Once you learned how to walk, it's there for life. You don't want it to change. You don't want to wake up one day and find, oh, hey, my subconscious mind automatically changed how to walk. Now I don't know how to walk today. No, that's not going to happen. So we recognize this. Subconscious mind's got programs resistant to change. Okay, so now I go, how does the conscious mind work and be creative? And I say, the conscious mind cannot be creative until you have a subconscious program. You go, I don't understand what you're saying, Lipton. So I go, okay, here's a story. Most everybody's familiar with that wonderful device called an iPod. An iPod is that little handheld music device. And I go, okay, an iPod, when you buy it and take it out of the box, brand new. And I say, okay, on the touch screen, you push play. I say, what happens? Brand new iPod, take it out of the box, push play. What happens? That's a question.
Oh,
what
me?
happens?
To me?
Yeah. What happens,
well, it plays
dear Carla?
it. You have music
brand new.
play. Or whatever.
What happens? That's a question.
Okay.
I have
talking over you.
I have to tell you now. I have to tell you. When you take a brand new iPod out of the box and push play, nothing happens.
Oh.
Why? Because you didn't download any music.
Oh, okay. I failed that test. Okay.
Okay. So the whole idea is this: to play. To create a playlist, creative, like conscious mind, creative.
Yeah.
The touch screen, which is creative. I can adjust the volume. I can adjust the EQ. I could select the songs. I could go fast forward, rewind, play, pause. I can control it, right? Consciously, anything I wish. But I say, guess what? If there's no program in that iPod, I control nothing. In other words, first you have to download a program, then you can become creative. Got it? Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, now here's the point. The conscious mind is the equivalent of the touch screen on the iPod. It's creative. Yeah, but if you have no program, there's nothing to create. So I say, oh, well, a brain is like an iPod. The first part of our development is download some programs, and then once we have a database, we can play with the program. Okay? So I say, oh, then a child is born like a blank iPod. There's no program in there. Can a child be conscious? Nope. Why? There's nothing to be conscious of. There's no data. Imagine if a child could speak the moment it's coming out of the birth canal. And so we're all waiting the birth of this baby. The head starts to crown. The head starts to come out. We see the child. The child looks up around like, what's going on here? We see the child and we say to the child, imagine it could talk. That's just an imagination. Imagine it could talk at the moment it's born.
Yeah.
The child's just coming out of the birth canal and we say to the child, tell us something. The child will look up at you and go, I don't know anything. I just got here.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I be conscious just being born? The answer is no. You have no data to be conscious of. So the first 7 years of your life, the brain is in a record mode. In EEG terms, the vibrational activity is called theta. Theta is imagination. That's why children, for the first 7 years, they mix the real world and the imaginary world because their brain is operating in a vibration called theta, which is imagination. But theta is also hypnosis. So it says, why should this happen? And here's a simple reason. How many rules, think about this as a rule set, how many rules must an individual learn to become a functional member of a family and a community? 5 rules, 10 rules, 1,000 rules, 10,000 rules. I go, well, probably 10,000 rules to be a functional member of how to deal with the world. And I go, okay, a child cannot participate in the family and in the community until it got 10,000 rules. So what are you going to do? Give an infant a textbook and say, listen, while you're hanging around, read these books, 10,000 rules, download them, I'll come back, I'll give you a quiz. No, A child can't learn that way. So nature designs the first 7 years as hypnosis, theta, download. So the first 7 years of our lives, we are downloading behavior. How do you do that? By observing other people.
Right.
Observing your mother's response to the world, how she deals with everybody else, your father's response to the world. Look, your father doesn't talk to children the same way he talks to adults. Your father doesn't talk to a policeman the same way he talks to his friends. And all of a sudden you start to see, oh my God, there's so many nuances. How can you learn them? And the answer is, oh, nature facilitated that. All you have to do is observe. So the subconscious mind is like a video recorder. Everything it sees, it downloads. And that's where you got your basic behaviors from. And so why is this relevant? The fundamental behaviors in your subconscious mind are not your personal wishes and your personal desires. They came from observing other people. Right. So the fundamental behaviors of your subconscious mind are other people's behaviors. Do they answer your wishes and desires? Absolutely not. So when you're operating from the subconscious mind, you're not running your life. You're replaying other people's behaviors and running their programs. And you say, well, I'm not going to let my subconscious mind run my life. I'm going to stay conscious, a process called mindfulness. I say it's very difficult. In fact, scientists will tell you that only about 5% of the day are you being conscious and running your nervous system with your wishes and your desires, conscious mind. Wow. 95% of the day, you are running programs. I say, why should I run programs that much? And here's the answer. Because the conscious mind, which can run the show, can also think. And if the conscious mind's thinking, then by definition, it's not paying attention. So I'll ask you a question, Carla. I'll say, tell me what you're doing at Friday at 4 o'clock. If you really try to answer that question, where do you go to get the answer?
I'm thinking.
You got to go into your head and think, what am I doing Friday? Oh, I'm doing this, 4 o'clock, I'm doing that. And I go, guess what? The moment you tried to answer the question, your conscious mind let go of the present moment and did what? It went into your conscious brain to try to figure out what was going on.
Okay.
Oh, so guess what? 95% of the day, the mind is thinking. And I go, so? I go, yeah, but when the mind is thinking, by definition, it's not paying attention to what's going on. So I say, well, because you're thinking, do you stop everything you're doing? You're walking down the street, you have a thought, all of a sudden you freeze, then the thought is complete. And now that the thought is complete, you can start walking again? And the answer, no, that's not how it works. When you're having a thought and you're walking, you continue walking. I said, well, then who's controlling that you don't walk into a tree or something? I go, when the conscious mind is busy, and this is the critical part, the subconscious mind is the default control. And since we think 95% of the day, then 95% of your life is not coming from your conscious, creative wishes and desires mind. Your behavior is controlled by your subconscious program. And I go, yeah, but those aren't your behaviors. They're your other people's behaviors that you downloaded. So let me, because I know we're running out of time, let me close with this thing that I give in a lecture and people laugh. But I think you want to know, it's the most profound thing I can tell you. So this is the story. I say to people, as I say, I'm sure if you go back in time, that you had a friend and you were very close to your friend. You knew your friend's behavior very, very well because you were very close friends. And you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day it dawns on you that your friend has some of the exact same behavior as their parent. You get excited by seeing this connection. So you want to offer this and you go something like, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then you back away from Bill. Because Bill goes totally ballistic. How the hell can you compare me to my dad? I am not like my dad at all. And everyone laughs because they're so familiar with it. And I go, most profound story of life I can tell you is that. And I go, what happened here? I say, why do most people laugh? Because most people are very familiar with it. I go, what does it mean? It says this: everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I go, well, how can that be? I say, he got his behaviors first 7 years by downloading his father's program. So in his subconscious mind, his behavior is patterned after his father's behavior. I say, yeah, but when does he play subconscious behavior? Oh, when his conscious mind's busy thinking, his defaults to the subconscious. So I go, and how much is that? I go, well, 95% of the day. And I said, but how come he doesn't see that he's behaving like his own father? And I say, because when he's thinking, he's not paying attention. His mind is inside trying to figure out some data. So what's happening on the outside, his behavior, is not observed by himself. So everybody else can see that that behavior matches his father, but Bill's the only one who doesn't see it. Why? Because when he's playing that behavior, the reason he's playing it is because his conscious mind's busy. Now, the summary of what has all this come down to is that 70% or more of the behavior that we download from our family and our community is disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting. And I say, well, what's the relevance? And I go, well, then 95% of the day when you're defaulting to the subconscious and you're not paying attention, the behavior that you're playing is sabotaging you. And you're the one that doesn't see it. And I go, well, what does that mean to me as an individual? Then it says, I get up in the morning with conscious mind, wishes, desires. Today I find the best job. Today I find the most wonderful romance. Today I create health in my body. I say, great, that's conscious wishes, desires, conscious thinking, creative. And I say, then you go through the day, you come home at night, worn out, tired, beat, and you go, geez, well, today wasn't the day. I didn't get healthy. I didn't find that relationship, and my job sucks. And then you look at it and you reflect for that moment as you're sitting in your chair and you're going, God, the universe is against me. I got up this morning with all these great positive wishes and desires, and I come home this evening with all these failures. And so it's not me. I'm the one that had great wishes and desires. The universe is against me. I'm a victim of fate. I'm a victim of the world because I wanted success. I got failure. It's not me. And all of a sudden it turns out, go back to the story of Bill. You went out with conscious mind wishing and then operated 95% of the day from sabotaging subconscious programs, come home, did not see that you were the one that was sabotaging yourself. And as a result of you not being visible to you, why Bill says, how can you compare me to my dad when everybody else can see it? How come your failure stands out? We thought it was the world, and it turns out, no, it was our own invisible, self-sabotaging, limiting behaviors that threw a monkey wrench in our lives. And it turns out we're not victims of outside forces. We're victims of inside programming. And if you rewrite the programming, you can change the outcome of your life. And then I'll give you one example, because it's the last book that I wrote called The Honeymoon Effect.
Okay.
And I say, just simply, I say, what is the honeymoon effect? I say, ask somebody who has just fallen in love, or actually look at somebody who's just fallen head over heels in love. First thing you notice is they're extremely healthy. Yep. Why? Because a mind in love releases the chemistry of health. Number two, they have lots of energy. I joke in the lecture. I say, come on, you fell in love. You had so much energy. You made love for days without stopping for food or sleep. That's how much energy you had. And everybody laughs. And I go, great. And then I also go, think about it this way. That period called the honeymoon, life was so beautiful. It was tantamount to heaven on earth. It was so beautiful. You couldn't wait to wake up the next day and have more of that loving, wonderful life. And I go, your life sucked all the way up until the day you met this person. And in 24 hours, all of a sudden you have heaven on earth. I go, what the heck was that all about? And here's the answer. Scientists have found that when you fall in love like that, it's a one time in your life you stay mindful. You don't let your mind wander. A simple reason is, look, you spent your whole life looking for this person. They're standing in front of you. Why would you let your mind wander now? Everything you wanted is right here. So guess what? You stay mindful. I say, well, what does that mean? You don't default to the program. You are now creating your life from what? Conscious mind, wishes and desires. What did you make? Wishes and desires. That's called the honeymoon. And all of a sudden I say, for the first time in your life, you didn't play the program. And guess what? For the first time in your life, you had total power over your life and you manifest heaven on earth. And I say you lose the honeymoon effect shortly. For what reason? Because no matter how much you're in love, you still have a job. You still have to do the chores. You got to pay the rent. And I say, why is that relevant? Because the moment you start thinking is the moment you let go of the creative conscious control that created the honeymoon. The more you start thinking, the more you start playing the programs you got from your community and family, the more you sabotage the relationship because those programs suck and they didn't play when you started the honeymoon, but they start playing after the honeymoon began. And that compromises the relationship because these negative behaviors that did not show up when you were being conscious start showing up when your conscious mind starts thinking, and your partner looks at you and goes, where the hell did that behavior come from? And then you or Bill saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Why? Because you just played all these negative behaviors. For what reason? Conscious mind was busy. Did you see the negative behaviors? No, but your partner sure did.
Yeah.
And that changes the relationship.
So Bruce, how do you, okay, so I'm taking all this in, and I'm thinking still, like, how, like, so it's twofold. It seems to me that you're saying that what we, as parents, when our children are learning from us, I mean, maybe be careful, like, to try to, be conscious of what we are giving to our children as beliefs in our value systems. And then the second part of that is to help them to become more mindful or to,
No, to give them, look, where did they get the program? Where does a child get the programming from?
Well, I guess parents.
Okay,
Family,
and even if a parent says, I'm going to be the best parent in the world,
Yes.
is that a conscious or subconscious attitude?
Well, it's conscious,
It's creative.
but then you can move into your subconscious when you're actually doing the parenting.
Well, that here's the problem. You
Yeah.
You unconsciously move into the subconscious.
Yes.
Because as you're living your life as a parent, 95% of your life is still going to come from your subconscious because you're still going to be thinking. So I'm going to say, when I'm mindful, when I'm present, keeping my mind present, I'm going to be the best parent possible. I go,
Okay.
that's really great.
Yeah.
But if you're a normal human being, 95% of your day is not going to come from that mind anyway. It's still
Right.
going to come. And guess what? You're going to replay the parenting behavior that you acquired from your parent.
Yeah.
And so that means that the behavior characteristics, if they're good or they're bad, they run through the lineage of a family.
Mm-hmm.
So, and why is this also important? Because remember, I said consciousness is controlling your biology. We said genes control cancer. So just think of the meaning of this, because this is profound.
Mm-hmm.
When a child is adopted into a family that has a history of cancer running in the family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer with the same probability as any of the natural siblings. And I go, yeah, but what's interesting? The child came from totally different genetics.
Mm-hmm.
So how did it end up with a family cancer? And the answer was, the cancer wasn't due to the genes. The cancer was due to programming that compromises your health.
Mm-hmm.
And so cancer is passed not because of genes. Cancer is primarily passed because of programming that is not in harmony with your life needs.
Okay, so how do we reprogram?
Okay, we only have a couple of seconds here,
Yeah,
so I'm
we do.
going to have to leave you with, if you want more information, my website, brucelipton.com. We'll
Yep.
talk about reprogramming under resources, but let me tell you, there are three ways to, the conscious mind is creative. That's its character. So I say, how does the conscious mind learn? Listening to this call,
Yeah.
watching a video, reading a self-help book, and everything. I go, yeah, every one of those educates the conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, you read the self-help book. I know you understood it. I give you a test. You get 100 on the test. Yes, you understood everything in the self-help book. Question is, now that you've read the book, now that I know you understand it, did your life change? And most people, the answer is no. I go, why not? Because you educated the conscious mind through reading a book, because the conscious mind's creative. We'll learn that way. But the subconscious mind does not learn that way. Mm-hmm. So no matter how much you educate the conscious mind, that learning did not transfer to the subconscious, because that's not the way it learns. And that's the biggest problem in our world. Our conscious minds become super smart, but our lives still remain exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Because the subconscious mind does not learn the way the conscious mind learns. The subconscious mind learns in three primary ways. Hypnosis. Well, yeah, that was the first 7 years of your life. Your brain was in theta.
Right.
You want to change subconscious, then you have to use a hypnosis process like what are called subliminal tapes.
Okay.
Okay, that's why. Number two, after you're 7, how do you learn anything in your subconscious mind? Habit. You repeated things. And once you repeat them, you learn them. How many times you say ABC before you could get to Z? You had to repeat it, stop, add, change, add, go further the next time, You finally get to A to Z. Guess what? Now it's done. You never have to do it again. Mm-hmm. You had to make a habit. So you want to change a habit that's not good? Then you have to make a habit that is good and exercise it religiously. Mm-hmm. Because how do you make a habit? You repeat it.
Yes.
So you want to change a habit, then you have to create a new habit. And that means repetition of a behavior. Okay. And then lastly, and we're running out of time.
Yep.
is that there are extremely fast ways now, new technology called energy psychology, where it's a super learning process, where you can go in and rewrite a program in your subconscious mind in minutes. And this is the most powerful thing on this planet right now because we don't have a lot of time to evolve change. The world is going through an upheaval right at this moment. We need to change now. So it's interesting that these energy psychology modalities, many of them, which I've listed 20 or more on my website, are ways to rewrite the subconscious program. Point, no matter how much you educate the conscious mind, that will not change the subconscious program. It's resistant to change. Therefore, if you have a behavior that's not supporting you, then you have to rewrite the subconscious mind. But to do that is A, hypnosis, B, repetition, C, is energy psychology, mind body stuff. Okay?
Awesome.
So why is this important? Because we need to change. And then the last thing, let me just close with this because I must go.
Sure thing.
The last thing is this. How do you know what your programs are? Because you got programmed from actually the last trimester of pregnancy, during year 1, during year 2, during year 3. I say, what program did you learn when you were 1 year old? And your conscious mind goes, I don't know. Why? Because the conscious mind wasn't working until about 7. So I say, then I don't know what my programs are because I consciously wasn't there. And then I go, this is the last point. 95% of your life comes from subconscious programming. So all you have to do is look at your life. And simple comes down to this. Those things that you like, that come into your life easily, come in there because you have programs that encourage them. Those things that you work hard for, put a lot of effort into, things that you sweat over to try to make happen. Why are you working so hard to make something happen? The answer is because you have a program that does not support those things. And that's why you're making so much effort to overcome the program. So basically, I say, if you want to know what your programs are, look at your life. Wherever you're having difficulty, it's because you have a program that does not encourage that. Wherever you have ease, then don't worry about it. You have a program that encourages that. So now it's easy to focus what changes you want to do because all you look at your life and say, what are the things that I want that I can't get? And all of a sudden you now have focused on the issues that need changing.
Awesome. Bruce, thank you for this awesome talk. I appreciate you being part of the second biannual Children's and Teen Health Summit. And to find out more about Bruce Lipton, I guess we would just go to brucelipton.com and find out everything about your current projects, any resources, all that kind of stuff. Correct?
Absolutely. So simple, Carla. And I just want to thank you and your audience for giving me this little bit of a platform to indicate to how powerful you really are, even though you didn't know it. Yeah. And if people take back their power, this world is going to evolve in the most beautiful way because I trust people as a group, not individuals that are running the show.
Awesome. Loved every minute of it, Dr. Lipton. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Carla. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
Bye-bye.